Welcome to episode 57 of the Princeton Podcast, produced by the podcast production team at HG Media, providing audio and video production services here in Princeton since 1999. In this episode, our Princeton Podcast host, Mayor Mark Freda, welcomed Mitch Henderson, Princeton University men's basketball coach. Mitch discussed his journey from a Princeton University student-athlete to the head coach of the Princeton University men's basketball team. Graduating in 1998 and becoming head coach in 2011, Mitch recounted thrilling NCAA tournament experiences, both as a player and as a coach. He reflected on his mentors, including Pete Carril and Bill Carmody, and shared insights into Princeton's unique basketball culture, recruiting strategies, and community involvement. Mitch also touched on his personal life, describing what makes our Princeton community such a special place for him and his family. So without any further introduction, let's join our host, Mark Freda, and his guest, Mitch Henderson, for episode 57 of the Princeton Podcast.
Mitch, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks. It's great to be here, Mark. Really a pleasure to be visiting with you.
I appreciate that very much. So let me just set the stage a little bit for our listeners. If you could tell us what year you graduated from Princeton University and what year you became the head coach of the Princeton University men's basketball team.
Yeah, so I'm a graduate from the university in 1998, and then I was named the head coach in 2011. So this is we missed a year for COVID, so this will be my 14th season.
It's amazing. It's amazing. So as a player, you were involved in two pretty big Tiger wins in the NCAA tournaments, two different tournaments. So can you talk about that? That's got to be a thrill as a player.
So this was a time that when the Ivy League champion was an automatic qualifier for the NCAA tournament. So I was recruited by Pete Carril. So my first year was 94, 95. We didn't make the tournament. At the time, Penn was terrific. We lost both games to them that season. And then my sophomore year, 1995, 96, which ended up being Coach Carril's last year, we made the NCAA tournament after a playoff win against Penn, and we played UCLA and won in the first round. It was an amazing game.
Yes.
43-41, really cool game. We actually made the tournament 3 times. Next year, my junior year, we lost to Cal in the first round down in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Then my senior year, we were 27-1 going into the NCAAs. We had one loss against North Carolina, and we beat UNLV in the first round. We were a 5 seed.
Yeah.
And then we lost in the second round to Michigan State.
It's just amazing. It's amazing.
I can tell you pretty much every play from those games, and I know, I don't, and this is true of the team that I coach now too. You don't remember as much when you're my age, when you're a little bit older, but you can remember the wins and exactly the record and kind of how, how you felt about your teammates. Yeah. Those are the things you remember.
That's great. That's great. So as a coach, let's flip it a little bit. So you took your team to the Princeton team to the Sweet 16. So, all right. So now you've experienced it both ways. So talk about that.
That was easily the coolest thing I've ever done as a coach, and anything I've ever done in sports. So when you become the head coach here, so I took over for Sidney Johnson, who I also played with, and then before him was Joe Scott, who coached me. Then John Thompson, who coached me, and Bill Carmody.
Yep.
And then, you sort of Coach Carril's name's on the court. So, I was 36 when I was named head coach, and I didn't want to screw it up on so many different levels, make thousands of mistakes, but I was fortunate enough to have been given a chance by Gary Walters and a lot of support from the athletic directors and the department and the university to get to a point where I felt very comfortable. And that group, we sort of had to win those 2 games in the Ivy League tournament to make the NCAAs. Right. We were on our way to Sacramento, early that next morning on Monday, flying as the 15 seed to play Arizona, and such a cool experience. And then later, and even now, to hear people's stories of how they flew to Louisville to the Sweet 16 to see us play, and the kind of reception that the bars and restaurants in town were getting during those games means a lot to me. To be a source of pride, be a part of a source of pride for the community. Yeah. And all I've ever wanted to do was make our mark here in a way that makes the township proud.
Yeah. Yeah. I just thought it was amazing how many people kept talking about that during, after, And even to this day.
Well, it's a big viewing audience, right? Like you're getting a ton of eyeballs, in the millions and, tens of millions of eyeballs on your program. We were the only East Coast school. I remember after we made the Sweet 16, Tosan, who was a really great player for us, and I went up to New York City. We were on CNN. We were on this show. We were, and it was the coolest thing because, you're just getting an opportunity to talk not only about our program and Tosan and our players, but about the university.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. All right. So a little bit about you. What attracted you to become a basketball player? And like, what, were you born a basketball player or what happened there?
I was in an athletic family. I have an older brother who was very athletic and would challenge me in a lot of different levels. And my goal, from when I can remember, I just wanted to beat him, my brother Kevin. So that was a motivator. And then I'm multi-sported. Like my parents had me in lots of different activities. Basketball was one of them, but football, baseball, tennis, swimming, whatever it was. And I'm just a big, firm believer in that and doing lots of different things as you're growing up. And then by the time I got to high school, I was still playing 3 sports. But I was good enough and got noticed enough by the coaches here at Princeton to say like, hey, we want you to come out. And, you and I are sitting here recording this not far from where I sat on my official visit at Conti's with Coach Carril. I think that, and this is true of my work now, is somebody has to recognize something in you. I had a lot of support, a lot of opportunities to play, and then really good coaching, and especially in basketball, to where I wasn't very good when I got here. I probably was better than I thought, but when I got here, I was like, Coach Carril told me that I wasn't very good at a lot of things. But I think I had the advantage of that, which I thought was a real gift.
Yeah. I'm going to get back to Pete in a little bit, but so, somewhat similar question. So you went from a basketball player to a basketball coach. What triggered that?
I was an econ major here, no interest in coaching. I think that you're one of two things. Kind of, you've been thinking about getting into coaching your whole life, and you were a good player, and people saw those things in you and sort of talked to you about it. I was the latter. I wanted to play, and then I had lots of thoughts on what I could do. After I was done graduating, I'm done playing. So I played a little bit, very briefly, overseas in the CBA, which was like back then kind of a development league towards the NBA. But clearly there was something in me that other people saw about coaching. So I was really fortunate. Bill Carmody got the Northwestern job and took me with him, and I got to be a really young assistant in the Big Ten at a very young age.
Yeah, and I remember Bill. In fact, that was my next question. Is you started your coaching career at Northwestern?
Yeah.
And so, just a little bit more. How was that?
It was great. Bill was really a father figure to me. They had a place on Westcott Avenue, and I would come over to his house and help him with stuff. Yeah. And he always looked after me. My father passed away while I was a student at Princeton. Oh. Bill drove me to the airport and and looked after me. So when I showed up at Northwestern, not only did I not know what I was doing, I was young.
Yeah.
And he gave me the rope to make mistakes, gave me responsibilities of all the different parts of running a program. As a coach, you got to wear like 20 different hats. I'm sure that this is nothing new to you. You've got to be good at a lot of it. And I was really bad at most of it, but I thought the basketball piece was where I was good. But speaking publicly, radio, scouting, recruiting, Bill gave me all kinds of responsibilities at a young age. I'm forever thankful to him, and he's still like my top mentor.
Yeah, I remember Bill. I actually knew Bill fairly well when he was here in town.
Yeah.
And I thought he was a great guy.
Amazing for me to, when I was a player for Coach Carril, Bill Carmody was the head coach, eventual head coach, but he was an assistant, John Thompson, Joe Scott. Yeah. It never was lost on me how the level and the high level of coaching and teaching that I was able to have. And I take that to heart and kind of how we go about our business now. But he's from a big family, one of 11 in Spring Lake, not too far from here. Yeah. And so I see him every now and again, big basketball family. Yeah. He was really kind to me.
Yeah. It's interesting when you look at the coaching history for Princeton University men's basketball and, kind of look at the bench there that was created? What Pete created and what came after Pete?
I would have often said, I don't know if there's any tree like it. Even going back to a guy named Butch Van Bredikoff, who was coach for Bill Bradley in the 1960s and mid-60s. Van Bredikoff coached Carril at Lafayette when he was there. He obviously played here. And then Carril was here for 29 years, and then, Carmody and so on to me. And, look, there's each of us, Coach Carril said to me, and so did Bill, like, you got to be yourself. But so much of what comes out of your mouth is something that somebody else has said to you. Yeah. And so, like that's what I was saying earlier when you asked me about the Sweet 16. I think I've been fortunate to develop my own voice, but I'm the byproduct of such good coaching and ways of talking. So I appreciate you bringing that up. It means an awful lot to me.
Yeah. Okay, let's switch gears a little bit.
Sure.
Where did you grow up?
Vincennes, Indiana. Okay. It's a small town on the southwestern side of Indiana. It's on the Wabash River. Sort of really cool place to grow up. It's the last sort of area in Indiana where daylight savings would, so right across the border was Illinois, and that let's say it was 9 o'clock at night where I was. You drive just a few minutes and it's 10 o'clock. So at 10 o'clock at night it was light out. So it's East Coast time. Yeah. And that's in Indiana, the Western Indiana, right? Wow. Small town of 20,000 people, and the high school basketball program was just terrific. It was called the Vincennes Lincoln Alices. And while I was growing up, one state championship, if you've ever seen the movie Hoosiers. Right. So one state championship, the high school team was awesome. So that's how I grew up, was going to the high school games, going to high school camp. I didn't know any different. I thought it was sort of the way it was everywhere. So really great place to grow up.
Oh, that's good. So anyway, sticking with questions mostly about you for a moment. How is living in Princeton for you and your family?
We love it here. I think of it as a little bit of an episode of Cheers. Everybody knows your name, and there's a sense of community in that. Yeah. It reminds me an awful lot in a different way of how I grew up and where I grew up. The community supports one another. Our kids go right here to CP, the community park schools, right here in town, and we like being an active and contributing member to the schools if we can, as much as we can. But I just love that, the way the university, the community, the relationship, we call those town-gown relations. But now that I'm a resident, and I've been living in New Jersey longer than I've lived anywhere else at this point, 4 years as a student and now, here as a head coach. But I just don't think there's as many towns in the country that do it as good as Princeton does it. Sometimes you hear people complain, but boy, you don't know how good you have it until you go somewhere else. I get a chance to go a lot of other places to see what it's like in other university towns. It's nothing like this, where you have a real great support system and a connection, sort of an interwoven fabric that really we all work together towards making one another better. And I see it in my friends that have older children that live in town. And I see it now better that my own children are a little bit older, but how often those kids come back and they're here visiting for Thanksgiving, for the holidays. We had a game against Akron on the 30th of December.
Great game.
Packed. Yeah, it was a great game. More gray hair for me, but great game. And I saw a lot of people that, grew up here that we've seen and had come to our camps that are back visiting their families. So it's a place where you can come back. And there just isn't anything like that I'm aware of.
Yeah. No, I think sometimes people take it for granted, or people just don't realize that, wow, this is a different place.
Right. And so what makes it special? I would ask you, like, what I have my own opinions, but what do you think?
Well, I think mostly it's the people. And there's such a mix of people here. I mean, luckily, and I think the mix makes a big difference. Yeah. But it's also, there's just so much here, whether it's right in Princeton itself or nearby. I mean, I don't know where else in the country that there is so much that is so convenient for you to do. Yeah. But again, I think it just gets back to the community. I mean, there's a real sense of community in this town. And, you walk around, you talk to people, and it's so easy chatting with people. Yeah. And you can meet people from so many walks of life in this town. It's incredible. I was on Spring Street on New Year's Eve. It was a nice day, and the town was packed. Yeah. So, you could tell these are visitors. Maybe they're just coming to Princeton to see what campus is like. I occasionally go to class with our players, and you see people from town surveying classes. Sure.
I don't know. If you're a curious person and want to get better, this is a really good place to live.
Oh yeah. Yeah. There's a lot here. It's amazing. All right. So I want to jump back to Pete Carril.
Yeah.
What a character.
Yes.
So, from your point of view, I mean, you've talked a little bit about him, but I just think the guy was amazing.
I could talk about Coach Carril all day. We don't have all day, but best way I can sum it up is on my recruiting trip at Conti's, not far from where we're sitting, he might have slugged a couple beers down while we were sitting there. And he told me, you don't dribble the ball that well with your left hand. You can't shoot. We're not sure if you can see, but we'd like to have you. And I loved that. And he was right. Very different from what I was hearing from other schools.
Yeah.
And it was a culture of brutal honesty. And there were lots of really difficult moments, but he told you right where you stood, what you needed to work on, wasn't afraid. He also was way ahead of his time. When I got to him, the college three-point line, this is just basketball talk, was invented, or, came out in 1987. And in that year, Princeton shot 50% of its shots from three. And that's really the norm now. But we're talking 40 years ago where he really saw the game. He looked at an open shot, whether it was from 30 feet or 2 feet, as a good shot.
Yeah.
And then 4 skilled shooting guards around playing a bigger post that was skilled, again, way ahead of his time. So we all knew that, the reason we were down 4 to Texas was because of him. We were good, but he was helping us get there with a minute left. You're right there in the game. So, and then look, I've talked to Pete Jr. and his family about this. Like, there were parts of coach that were difficult. And, but the one thing that was really fun for me was I got a chance to see him when I came back as head coach. He was living back in town and was here.
Yes.
And from the age of about 80 for him to 90, I saw him almost every day. He came to practice. And that was a very different side of him.
Yeah.
That I got to witness and be around. And I'm not sure we were great friends, but we were friendly.
Yeah.
And he would, I'd say, hey, what do you see? And he would say what he saw. So how many coaches get a chance to have that? And he really was supportive and helpful. So much of what I do now is, I think I'm being myself, and I remember the words and that he would give to me, and when he would give me compliments, it meant a lot to me because he just didn't give them out to anybody.
Yeah. So I can remember two things about Pete, and I knew people that knew Pete, so I got introduced to him. So I can remember seeing him at the Carousel when it used to be at Nassau and Pine Street, and having breakfast there. And that was always a treat to stop in and have Pete say hi to you and chat with him. And the other thing was the group of people, all the people from Princeton that got on buses and went to when he got inducted into the National Basketball Hall of Fame. Yeah. What an event that was. And to see all the people that came there just for him.
Yeah, it's cool. As 1996, Coach retires. 1997, he's inducted in the Hall of Fame. And I say this with total respect. Never won a national championship, never went to a Final Four as a head coach, was wildly successful here, and largely on who he was as a person, his stature on campus, how he interacted with faculty and staff, his impact on a community was largely felt not just by us here, but nationally.
Yeah. And
recognized by the committee as like, this guy needs to go in the Hall of Fame right now. I also went to the Carousel for breakfast.
There you go.
With him. And, I thought you were going to mention the crew of people here that he kind of knew. He was, he was a laborer at heart. His dad worked in the steel mills in Bethlehem, PA.
You must have known Red Troney.
Well, I worked for Red.
I was going to say, yeah.
I worked for Red my summer before my senior year. Sure. I knew the Troney family well, and Red, boy, that was, I can't believe you just brought that up. Yeah.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Going from Pete to Bill as coach, what kind of change was that?
Yeah, really different. And yet the same. I think we had almost the whole team coming back minus one guy. We had just won the league. The next 2 years under Bill, we went 14-0 and 14-0 in the league, and we had terrific years. I remember distinctly Bill saying that fall, just throw those passes. And again, all respect to Pete, but he hated turnovers.
Yes.
So he didn't want you to throw the ball away, and Bill said, just throw it. And that really helped me in particular because I was not a great shooter, but I was a really good passer. And that gave me the confidence to throw it. And Bill really kind of said, just do it.
Yeah.
And I thought that was just what we needed, that group. And it kind of gave us that really big platform that we were looking for.
Yeah. My perception is that Pete wasn't big on dunking the ball either.
Not true. There's a rumor. I mean, look, some of us couldn't dunk. I think he was as big a fan of a dunk as anybody else. Again, I'll make fun of myself. I hammered a dunk home against Harvard my freshman year, and we got in the locker room. He goes, "You dunked the ball. Look at you running around, jumping out of the gym, and you only have 2 rebounds. What's wrong with you?" So I think a little bit of it was like, look, let's be really good at the things that matter the most.
Yeah.
But I love players that dunk the ball.
Oh yeah, that was a big deal in this, at Jadwin when somebody from Princeton would dunk it because it didn't happen all that often back then.
I think people like to see winning.
Yeah.
I think that's what coaches was interested in.
Yeah.
But it doesn't hurt when it's fun to watch the team play.
Yeah, yeah. So I think you talked about this, but it sounds like you've picked up a lot from the other coaches you've played or worked with. So Pete, from Bill, I mean, any others have any like specific things that you kind of picked up
absolutely. Losing is an amazing teaching tool. Not just losing as a head coach, but I cut my teeth in the Big Ten. So Bill Ryan, I became good friends with one of the assistants at Wisconsin. So when I became head coach, I spent some time in Wisconsin when they were really good. Tony Bennett at Virginia, and then Jay Wright at Villanova. All were very nice and kind to me. I was looking at programs. After my first couple years here, we were good, but I didn't think that I was having enough success to sustain it and stay in my job, frankly. And I was looking, okay, how do I have sustained success over time? And really, it became a defensive thing for me. So I think studying from other people, asking questions, being vulnerable is, for me, been a crucial path towards improving as a coach. I'm still very much improving all the time. I would say that my strengths are that I'm a good listener, probably not as good as I could be, but I really work at it, and then watch other people play and ask the right questions. That's been wildly influential to me.
Yeah, I think those are good life lessons in general for people.
Yeah, I mean, well, you learn a lot losing.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just the sickness. Like when we win, I feel just okay.
Yeah.
Normal. When we lose, I feel like depths of the earth bad. But that's probably again my sickness. But that's why I think diving into the development of the group of people is really the joy of working at a place like this.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think anybody, as you said, that's willing to say, I need to listen to others. Yeah. I can learn from others. And let me put some effort into actually learning from others.
I like being around people like that.
Yeah.
If somebody doesn't listen, yeah,
it's tough.
When you stop talking, you stop telling them what you're thinking.
Yeah, it's like, why bother?
Right. Yeah. And that, you're the mayor. I don't know. You walk around, people tell me how to set ball screens better. I'm sure you get some advice. So you got to deal with that. But it's also, I think, part of the fun of the job.
It is. Interacting with people is the best part of the job, in my mind. But so, okay, you're the coach. You kind of mentioned there's so much more to coaching than just saying, here's how you play basketball. You got recruiting, you got scouting, you got practices to run. You have stuff during the season, after the season. You got to retain players, attract players. How do you do all this?
That is a great question. Again, first is the right staff that understands the ethos and the mission of the school. So that in recruiting, we identify our kind of guys. So for us, we've identified guys that have humility first.
Yeah.
So let's say all the things you just said. If I'm dealing in the spring with somebody that's like, well, I need to have the ball in my hands more. Who doesn't?
Yeah.
Or a family that's really like, that maybe in recruiting process, you could have identified some of those qualities that look, you have to have that to be a good team, but is the humility of the kid, the family, worked into the kid's DNA and the family's DNA so that when we start to play together, that the team becomes important.
Yeah.
And then do they care about the details of winning, and then joy, right? So all of these things how do you do all these things? The summer recruiting, the spring retention, the fall sort of, okay, here's how hard it's going to be. I think it's we call that culture, but it's really like the fabric of a family. This is what we stand for, and we don't stand for you not being this way.
Yeah.
And try to hold them to that account. I think taking care of myself is crucial, and making sure I'm not an ogre. So, I try to have some fun and, meditate. And I spend a lot of time, thinking and talking to people I know that are in similar type positions to say, like, okay, and try to have a lot of confidence where I can say, like, hey, look, I'm struggling here. What do you see?
Yeah.
And not be afraid to listen to that. Because it's almost always painful, but they're almost always right when they're telling you something.
Yeah. Again, being able to listen.
Yeah.
But I luckily I get to go to a fair number of games, thank God, because I enjoy Jadwin. I think it's a great venue.
Thank you for coming.
And yeah. So, but I sit kind of like behind the bench a little bit, and you can watch, as the players get subbed in and out. Right, they come off the court and they work their way down the entire row. So I'm coming off, not me, but someone's coming off, right? Fist bump all the way down.
Yeah.
And so it's like they're all interacting with each other continuously throughout the game. And I think that's just a level of sportsmanship and involvement and team play that you don't see
Those
everywhere.
are the little things that make a difference. Also, sometimes when you're getting subbed out of a game, maybe a natural inclination is to say, I've done something wrong. And self-judgment sort of factors in.
Yeah.
And we want to have a culture of like, you're doing just fine. Mistakes are going to be a huge part of what we are and what we're doing.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're not getting subbed out for that at all. We just want to give you a minute's rest, or we like this matchup going in. And I'm sure they don't always love going down there and touching everybody else and saying hi, but it's a sense of community that you have right there on the bench, right there for you. And I tell the guys all the time, like, we're going to be right here. Don't look at us. And we're going to be cheering like hell for you guys out there.
Yeah. So do you have time for anything else in your life besides basketball?
Not a ton at this point. I call this like the submarine, but my family's really crucial to me. Again, we've talked about Princeton. We like being involved in the community in any way possible. My kids are really at a very active stage in their life. So I like to be a part of that. My wife works in New York and Philly and is busy. So, and then I like seeing my friends.
Yeah.
But I wake up in the middle of the night thinking about basketball. So Coach Carril used to always say to me, like, have you started talking to your plate yet? So that happens. But I don't know. I think it's an ongoing process and trying to be clear and present.
Yeah. One last question. So as I said before, as a fan, watching a basketball game at Jadwin, I think is a great experience. How was it for you as a player, and how is it now for you as a coach?
That's a really good one. It's so different as a coach than it was as a player. I loved playing there as a player. I now have a few hundred games under my belt, coaching and several hundred, right here at Jadwin. And it is people like you that come to the games. I see you. I see others that have been there since I've been there, and it is very important to me, as it was when I was a player, that we are a source of pride for the community and the way in which we play. Hopefully win.
Yeah.
But so I sense that and feel that as the head coach. I like that we have, it's almost mostly full these days, and that's very happy about that. So that's a lot of years putting in the work to get to that point, because I've played games there as a head coach, even when I first got started, where I thought we had a really good team, but we didn't have it. And that, I think, is a testament to the longevity of this recent kind of run that we're on.
Yeah.
And I want to keep that going. And for everybody that's listening that comes to games, thank you for coming to the games. It means an awful lot to us and to our players.
Yeah. And if you're not going to games, you really should. It's a great time.
Thank you.
It's a great atmosphere. But I mean, you sit close enough. You're involved in the game.
Well, I'll tell you, it really makes a difference in how we're moving. We just move a little bit faster when that gym's full. We've just won this buzzer-beating game against Akron.
Amazing game.
And the crowd noise as they were debating on whether or not that was a 2 or a 3.
Oh my gosh!
Boy, it kind of factors in, you know. So thanks to everyone listening who is supporting us. We love it.
Yeah. Mitch, I want to thank you very much for spending time with us today. We
Mark,
really appreciate it.
This is a pleasure and an honor to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for the 57th episode of the Princeton Podcast, produced by the podcast production team at HG Media. And special thanks to Mitch Henderson for taking the time out of his busy schedule to join us on this episode of the Princeton Podcast. If you enjoyed the Princeton Podcast, please share it with your friends. Visit our website at princetonpodcast.com. And be sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Podcasts, Amazon Music, or wherever you listen to podcasts.